Really don't mind if you sit this one out. My words but a whisper, your deafness a shout. I may make you feel, but I can't make you think.
Now, this tour that you're on right now, it marks the 40th anniversary of the Aqualung album. A great album. I'm a big fan. It sold very well. What made your music endure so much, well, as other artists seems like they'll be more prone to fade away? Most of the artists from early 2000s you're not hearing much of anymore. Your name is still out there. It's still big in the music community. What did your music do differently that other artists have failed to do where it's still around?
One of the nice things that we see is that there is an enormous spread, generationally speaking. Initially, in the early days of the band, I suppose the audience was sort of mid-teens up to 30. Now I see there are young people coming of their own volition, not being dragged by their parents. Probably they were dragged by their parents when they were, you see 5, 6, 7, 8-year-olds obviously not buying tickets on their own, but those are the people that later on decide, oh, I like that music, and then they come back, and then you see people all the way up to 65 and 70, and I think one of the nice things is there's something for everybody in the music that we played, and as we were talking about earlier, the evolution of the sound. Maybe there's certain eras that appeal to certain people more than other eras, but the fact that the band has evolved through these different styles is what has probably collected fans that would be considered sort of a disparate audience over the years, but they've stayed with us because Jethro Tull is not really subject to the whims and vagaries of the music business. We're really under the radar in a way, and because we are, we're able to kind of work and do what we like, and the audience comes along with us for the ride. It's not a transient. We're lucky, but the band is out there working all the time, and it's we're not taking 3, 4, 5 years off between tours.
I guess it's got to have something to do with the drive of the people who are in the band, and probably also the fact that we do different kinds of music. Like Doan said earlier, there's some loud, riffy things, and there's some quieter, very delicate things, very personal, romantic things. It's a whole bunch of different things. Why the band has lasted so long, it's because it's driven and just wanting to keep going, and I suppose a certain amount of luck. All young bands starting out, it needs a big push at the beginning, but then maybe some people drop off along the way because the drive to succeed isn't there, or your interests go in other directions and you meet girls.
I think there's a need to be creative, and for those that write music, there's a need to want to write music, and the output of this band is extraordinary. I don't know how many albums actually, if you tallied it up, how many albums there are, but it's huge. The back catalogue is enormous, but and it's continually happening. I suppose is what I'm saying. The development of the material, the writing of new material, is still happening today.
How has your music really evolved over the 40-year span you've been around? Because you've gone through a bunch of kind of progressive phases. How has your music evolved?
I think it's just the natural progression and evolution that bands go through. The band started out as a blues band with a little bit of jazz influence and rock, and then early on there was even a Middle Eastern influence as early as stand-up. I think it got a little heavier at Benefit, and with each, to a degree, with the changing lineups, the lineups had an effect on the evolution of the sound. And as you know, it's been noticed, sort of went through the blues, jazz, rock, then the progressive rock. Folk was incorporated, Middle Eastern, classical elements. But I think that came as obviously as a result of Ian's, as a composer, his interest in all that music.
As technology moved on, certainly in my department, in the keyboard department, keyboard players started to use synthesizers. It wasn't just the organ and it wasn't just the piano. And Ian started to play around with different effects on his flutes. So as technology progressed, so the sounds progressed. And it may even be worth bearing in mind that as fashions through the decades went along, some of those 80s synthesizer sounds definitely started to appear in some of the music that Jethro Tull was playing round about the 80s. You know, that's no coincidence.
You, David and John, you both joined actually in 2007, if I'm not mistaken. What was it like coming into a band that had two players, Ian and Martin, who've been together for over 40 years, and you, Doan, with them for most of it? What was that kind of like coming in there?
That was a bit scary at first, but they made us feel very welcome. And of course, what they have is all those years of playing experience, but playing together and playing this music together. When John and I were first working with Ian, we were working on his solo projects, and I guess, and because that wasn't with Martin and it wasn't with Doan, we were working only to records. You know, this is how the song goes, and work from that to have something to play.
This was the next natural evolution of the band, and they play differently than everybody that's come before. And I think that it's really encouraged within Jethro Tull for whatever stylistic individuality that we all possess as musicians is encouraged to be put forward, along with the acknowledgement of, you know, all the I have to acknowledge the parts that came before me that Clive Bunker and Barrymore Barlow played, but I have to also make them fall comfortably under my own hands. So I interpret them, try to keep the general feel and sound, because people expect certain things. But also for all of us, we have to make adjustments so that we can play the parts convincingly and add whatever we feel we want to add to make it our own. Got anything to say about that, John?
Well done. I'd say being a musician, you're constantly practicing, you're constantly trying to better yourself as a musician and become more and more. You never stop educating yourself. And I keep using this phrase in all of the work that I do, that music is a community thing, it's a sharing thing. And actually what Dave said right at the top of this question was that they were very inviting to us and welcoming to us. That was because we were being invited into that community known as Jethro Tull. Jethro Tull's got a sound of its own, which I think comes from the way Martin plays and the way Ian has played from day dot, and the way Doan has been playing since he's been in the band. And we, Dave and I, had to sort of like acknowledge that, and
You do.
and we came with our own voice. Yeah, absolutely. We each as individual players have our own signature, our own way of playing, and it was just trying to apply that into the parts that, for example, I was listening to from Andy Giddings, my predecessor, or going way back to John Evans on the Aqualung album. And you try to acknowledge those players, but then you just try to give it a little bit of yourself as well.
Just more for all three of you, actually. I know most of you, if not all, come from musical backgrounds, and I was wondering what some of your influences were that ended up getting you into this particular field, because success is hard in music, especially, and what drove you there and who kind of inspired you to get there.
My father, strangely, he was a musician in a band, and I only saw him playing in the band the once. Don't remember a great deal about it, but he used to practice at home, and I was curious and listened to him practicing, either on trumpet or on guitar, and then later on bass. and then we took a new house somewhere in North Wales in England, in the UK, and he joined the band, and I started playing drums, and he needed a drummer, so I ended up playing in my dad's band, which was a fantastic experience. It's still something which I have very, very happy memories of. And then I started to drive and learn to drive on a provisional and a learner's driving license. And Dad used to sit next to me, and I used to drive to the gigs. That's how I learned to drive, driving to gigs. And at the end of a summer season that we did together, I took a driving test and passed, because I'd driven so much for about the whole of the summer. I've been driving to and from gigs almost every night.
Legal.
Totally legal, actually. Totally, yes. It was all completely legitimate. Yeah, it was all very, very good. But yeah, my dad.
Yeah, actually, come to think of it, my dad also was an influence. He did play a very small banjo called the banjolele banjo as a young boy, as a younger man, which I think he'd learned off his father. And that was, I think, growing up in the northeast of England as he did, it was a common instrument around at that time. And he used to build amplifiers and all sorts of things with friends at school. So that certainly was an encouragement, although I never saw him or heard him play the banjolele banjo. Although he did. He was quite encouraging. And when I was 10, he bought me a guitar, which I'd been... I'd been really wanting a guitar for probably a year or two, because I had seen the Beatles on TV, and when I was 8, and that was the thing I think that turned me. I know I'd been listening to the radio and listening to all different types of music, and my parents had some records but not a lot, and it was a very conservative listening experience. But they had their favourites. It could have been anything. But it was definitely seeing the Beatles. There was just something different there. And of course, friends wanted to play the guitar, and so I did. And one thing led to another.
My granddad, because he had 3 daughters, none of them were really interested in music, and they had a piano in the house. And when I would go visit my grandparents, when he would get back from work, he had the first stereo of anybody that I knew, and he loved classical music, and so he would have me come in to the living room, and he'd put on saying Brahms or Shostakovich, and he'd say, "Listen to this," and so I would get really excited because he was so excited about it. So classical music was really all I heard initially growing up. First, I mean, going back maybe to the age of 5, I didn't know anything about pop music. And I think that he derived a great deal of enjoyment because he saw that he was instilling in me a love for music. And then I think when I was 7, I started playing the piano, and that was my first instrument, and sort of the reverse in a way, I guess, of John. And I think of myself in a lot of ways as a frustrated piano player who ended up playing drums for a living. I still play piano. I have, when I'm at home, I play the piano far more than I practice the drums. Sorry to say, I mean, it's only because I feel that for me at this point, and I like to write a lot more now, and I think the piano is such a grand instrument for that because it incorporates everything. But my grandfather, had it not been for him, I don't think it would have come directly from my family, because the rest of my family was a little unmusical. Plus, music was not considered a viable career option in any sense, because it was, it's a difficult field. But like Dave, when the Beatles came along, then I thought, that looks like a fun job, and playing the drums and piano and marimba. I mean, so it's all part of the percussion family. A lot of the same independence required on the piano you would use on the marimba, but you would also be using the same techniques that you would be using as a drummer. So I often think of the marimba or the mallet instruments as being the midway point between piano and drums. And but had it not been for the Beatles, I probably would have ended up being a bad piano player, you know, in some bar somewhere, and I might still be. That could still be in my future. You never know.
I think one of the things that makes your band so great and so interesting, just for me as a listener, is the changes have kept me involved. Even though I haven't been around for nearly as long as your band has been, the changes keep me listening. And I think one of the things I like so much is that it appears that the actual members of the band enjoy playing their music, like you just said. And I think it makes it a lot of fun for just about everyone. Thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. I really am a big fan. I'm not just saying that because I'm interviewing you. I really do appreciate it. Go have a great concert. Enjoy your tour. Congratulations on 40-plus great years of music. And thank you so much for your time.
Really don't mind if you sit this one out.